Aurangabad is a district headquarter and also a headquarter of Aurangabad division of Maharashtra. There is a group of 12 caves at Aurangabad which are divided into three groups. The western group consists of 5 caves. The eastern group consists of 4 caves and the remaining 3 caves are unfinished. The caves were discovered by a British officer, Mr. Broadley, in 1858 and subsequently he published a brief report. The detailed description of this cave is later on published in the Cave Temples of India by James Ferguson and James Burgess in 1880. So before going to see the architectural, iconographic and religio-cultural significance of these caves, it is important to see how Buddhism entered in this region. Fortunately, we have some evidence preserved in Buddhist canonical text which talk about the entry of Buddhism in this region. Sutta Nipat, which is a part of Sutta Pitak and Khuddaka Nikaya, provides very interesting account of entry of Buddhism in this region. The sage Bauri, who was a great sage of Vedic religion, had established his ashram in this region, and later on his 16 disciples visited Buddha in North India. Some of them returned back and established Buddha's teaching in this region. So probably this is the first recorded or first preserved evidence in the Buddhist canonical text. Other Buddhist texts like Theravada also provides information about the entry of Buddhism in the Western Deccan. On the basis of textual evidence, we can say that Buddhism entered in this region during the Buddha's time. These caves consist of a single chaitya, that is cave number 4, and the remaining are mostly the either shrines or monasteries. Architectural pattern and the iconographic features help us to understand chronological framework as well as how different sects develop in this monastic complex. The earliest cave, that is cave number 4, which can be tentatively dated to the 1st century of the Common Era, is a Chaitya Gruha and belongs to Hinayana or Theravada sect. It seems that the presence of Hinayana or Theravada sect at this group was for a short period. The scholars believe probably there was a monastic complex of the same period which could not be preserved during the time. Cave number 5, cave number 1, 3 are of Mahayana period, and it seems that these caves, their architecture as well as iconographic features show light on the presence of Mahayana sect or Mahayana in this group. Lastly, this group of caves also witnessed the emergence of early Tantric Buddhism in this region. Cave number 2, cave number 6, cave number 7 and cave number 9 show the strong influence of Tantric Buddhism or Vajrayana, not only on their architectural pattern but also on their iconographic scheme. Some scholars like John Huntington believes that cave number 6 and cave number 7 were associated with the some kind of mandals of Tantric Buddhist text, and he has made an attempt to associate the arrangement of Bodhisattvas and Buddha's figure with Vajradhatu mandala. So it seems that from the 1st century of the Common Era till the end of 8th century, the religio-cultural activity of either excavating Buddhist caves, the supporting Buddhism was continuously going at Aurangabad. But there is a kind of hiatus from the 2nd century of the Common Era till the late 3rd century of the Common Era, because we do not get any cave which can be associated with the late Hinayana phase. So this cave, the cave number 4, that is the earliest cave, seems to belong to the early phase of Buddhist architecture or early Hinayana or Theravada Buddhism of the Western Deccan. Although we do not get any epigraphic evidence in this group, but one of the inscriptions from the Kaneri provides very enigmatic evidence regarding these caves. One of the inscriptions in cave number 3 at Kaneri mentions the donation of 2 caves at Rajatalak in Patithan. Patithan, that is a Pratishthan, was the ancient capital of the Satavahanas and is located near Aurangabad. So this is the only monastic site in the vicinity of Paitan or ancient Pakistan. So scholars such as Dr. Shobna Gokhale has identified the Buddhist caves at Aurangabad with the caves mentioned in this inscription. So she has made an attempt to identify Rajatalak with Aurangabad. This is probably one of the most interesting rock cut complexes in the Western Deccan, where we do get very much presence of female imagery or Shaktis. The images of Bodhishaktis, that is the female counterpart, or the Shaktis of Bodhisattvas. Also Saptamatrukas in cave number 6A, and the most interesting as well as curious or enigmatic presence of Lajja Gauri in cave number 2. The presence of female figurines or imagery is mostly found in or mostly dominating in the caves of Eastern group. For example, cave number 6, 7, cave number 8 and 9. Whereas in the Western group, we find very few female imagery. By the emergence and development of Tantric Buddhism, besides the Bodhisattvas, the Bodhishaktis or the imagery of Bodhishaktis had also got an important role in entire religio-philosophical perspective. The most interesting female figurine in this group is a dancing figure, which is found in cave number 7. Although no satisfactory identification of this dancing figure has been done, but some scholars believe she may represent Amrapali, very well-known figure during the Buddha's time. Some scholars associate her with Tara, who is Bodhishakti of Avalokiteshvar, and one of the most prominent female imageries in Buddhism, whereas some scholars have not yet satisfactorily identified her. So it seems that how the significance of female imagery either in the visual art or either in contemporary Buddhist rites and rituals develop, and eventually under the influence of Shaktism, how these female figurines not only enter in the Tantric Buddhism but also occupied important place. The presence of Saptamatrukas in cave number 6 suggests that during the 8th and 9th century of Common Era, after the caves were discontinued as a Buddhist monastic complex, so how an unfinished excavation was later on occupied by the followers of Shaivism and Shaktism, and some of the Matruka figures or a set of 7 figures, that is the Sapta Matruka, was excavated in this cave. Talking about Lachcha Gauri, how this female figurine, which is mainly associated with the cult of fertility and prosperity in the Western Deccan, occupied a position in Buddhist caves. Also we do get the image of Gajalakshmi in eastern group of these Buddhist caves. So presence of Lachcha Gauri, Gajalakshmi suggests how under the influence of folk cult, contemporary Buddhist society occupied or incorporated them in the contemporary Buddhist imagery. And the association of Buddhism with folk cult, either with the Nagas, Yakshas, can be noticed from the Buddha's period onwards. Especially in the Western Deccan, that is the caves at either Aurangabad or at Ajanta, we find the prominence of either Nagas, Yakshas or such a folk imagery strongly suggests that how these local cults were incorporated and were supported contemporary Buddhism in the early centuries of the Common Era. The images of Shaktis or the Saptamatrukas in contemporary Buddhist, contemporary Brahminical or Hindu caves, such as Ellora, or there is another small monastery, small cave complex at Takridokeshwar. We find the presence of female figurines or female imagery in their iconography scheme. From 6th century, 6th-7th century of the Common Era, we find how Buddhism had taken a new direction in its ritualistic practices, and how the presence of female figurines or female imagery not only entered but started to develop or started to become more prominent. If we compare the Buddhist caves, which show the Buddhist caves at Ellora, which show a more developed phase of Tantric Buddhism than the Aurangabad, we get female figurines. So if we compare or if we carry out a general study of both caves, that is Aurangabad and Ellora, so both Buddhist cave complexes suggest that how under the influence of Tantric rituals or Tantric Buddhism, female figurines started to get prominent or dominating over the entire religious iconography or religious scheme of imagery. It is very interesting to see that the Buddhist texts which talk about or which deal Tantric Buddhism provide detailed account of worship of various Shaktis or Buddhist goddesses. They codified very late. So it seems that even before the codification of such standard texts, for example, Nishpanna Yogavali, Guhya Samaja Tantra, Sadhana Mala, the worship of female deities was very much present in Buddhism, and it took a long time for codification, because as we know, generally the tantric practices or the religio-cultural practices of esoteric religion are generally secret and not shared with common people. These Buddhist texts, that is the Sadhanamala, Nishpanna Yoga, Guhya Samaja Tantra, Human Prabha, we find the worship of female deities was very much developed in Tantric Buddhism. But in Aurangabad caves, we find primary nature or prototype of such worship, which later on become more standard and codified in the text. a very interesting cave in entire Buddhist caves of Western Deccan. It was discovered in early 60s of the 20th century while clearing the debris in and around of cave number 6. So this is a kind of an accidental discovery. Some scholars say that the presence of Buddha figures on the right side, whereas the left wall depicts Saptamatrukas, and we have an image of Ganesh at the back. So they have made an attempt to show how the both religious practices were going on simultaneously or in a harmonious way. Whereas M.N. Deshpande suggested that Ganpati was basically a folk deity, and the presence of Ganpati in most of the Buddhist caves in later phase suggests how the Yaksha cult subsequently transformed into the cult of Ganpati. Because we also do get the image of one of the Ashtavinayakas later on enshrined in one of the Vihara caves at Junnar, especially in Ganesh Lili group. So it suggests that the association of Ganpati with the Buddha or Buddhism in Western Deccan is very interesting and suggests that probably because the earliest depiction of Ganesh is found on the coping stones of Amravati, and in that context Ganpati appeared as a yaksha, as a supporting figure or as a supporting semi-deity of the Buddhism. Okay. So this association taking as a marker, we find that how the association of folk cult with Buddhism later on developed in this way. There is another opinion that probably by the end of 8th century the excavation of cave 6A was discontinued, and in that stage only 2 Buddha images were excavated. Later on this cave was occupied by the followers of Shaivism and Shaktism, and they excavated or they carved the images of Saptamatrukas, Ganesh along with Virabhadra. We can also look at this cave beyond the specific framework, that in early medieval period we find a kind of conflict, a kind of crisis between Buddhism and Shaivism. It is very much seen from the Eastern India. So from the Buddhist texts of Eastern India as well as the Buddhist imagery of Eastern India, we get interesting evidence about such tension between these two religions. So in that connection, probably in Western Deccan, this cave might reflect a kind of a sort of tension or crisis between these two religions. So in cave number 7, we find the largest sculptural panel of Ashtamahabhaya Avalokiteshwar in the entire Buddhist caves of the Western Deccan. Such panels of Ashtamahabhaya Avalokiteshwar are also noticed from the Buddhist caves at Ajanta, Kaneri, and in paintings we find one such representation from Pitalkhora cave number 3. So Buddhism was strongly supported by traders and merchants. So besides the political patronage, Buddhism had always enjoyed the patronage given by trading community. So it is very interesting to see how the imagery of Ashtamahabhaya Avalokiteshwar not only introduced in entire Western Deccan but subsequently got the significant position in the religious imagery. The Buddhist text prescribe Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara as a Bodhisattva who is protecting traders, lay people and monks who were going from one place to another. Bodhisattva, which is shown with 8 dangers. That is the danger of fire, danger of shipwreck, danger of snake, danger of captivity, danger of ferocious animals, danger of elephants. It shows how the monks, the traders and the people were suffering from such dangers. And finally they evoke Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara for the protection from 8 dangers. So by this time Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara established his significant place in Buddhism. Further, it also shows by the end of 6th-7th century in the Western Deccan, Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara's worship was reached at a developed stage. So for me, the presence of Astamabhaya Avalokiteshvara in Kaneri, Ajanta or Aurangabad caves or in Ellora caves suggests he was very much popular in the contemporary society as a protector of trading community, protector of monks and lay people. Because his name itself suggests that Avalokita Ishwar, the God who is always observing the people. Because Avalokita is basically to avalokan, to observe the people from all directions. He is also known as a Padmapani, as one who holds or one who bears Padma, that is a lotus flower. But besides this name, the Avalokiteshvara name is more common, and later on we find how 108 forms of these Bodhisattva develop in Buddhist imagery. And probably Avalokiteshvara was developed as a parallel deity to Shiva of Shaivism. And some of his forms, that is a Sinhanadan Lokeshwara or Avalokiteshvara as a Rakta Lokeshwara. So all Sadakshari Lokeshwara. So all such forms show how this deity became the most important bodhisattvas in Buddhist imagery. Bodhisattva Vajramani was also an important deity in Tantric Buddhism because he himself represented as a protector of esoteric knowledge. In early Buddhism, especially early Tantric Buddhism, and in Buddhist caves at Ellora or Aurangabad, we find comparatively less sculptures of Vajramani. But from the 10th century onwards, especially in Eastern India, we find Vajrapani's important place. Bodhisattva Manjushri was also another important bodhisattva, which is rarely or less frequently depicted in Buddhist caves of Aurangabad. Maitreya was an important bodhisattva during the Mahayana phase, and we do get the images of Maitreya even from the end of 1st century of the Common Era till 6th, 7th century onwards. But if we look at the position and the functional aspect of Bodhisattva's imagery, no doubt Avalokiteshvara was the most significant and enjoying most prominent place. Dhammachakra Pravartan Mudra signifies Buddha's first sermon, that is the Dhammachakra Pravartana Sutta, which is the base of entire Buddhist philosophy. So probably Buddha in Dhammachakra Pravartan Mudra represents Buddha as a teacher, as a guide, and probably this form of Buddha figure was more patronized by contemporary lay people or traders or the royal families. Rarely we also find Buddha either in Dhyana Mudra, that is in meditation or meditative pose, or Buddha in a Bhumisparsha Mudra, which is basically one of the most important events in Buddha's life associated with the Mara Vijaya. That is his great victory over the personification of evil or bad thoughts. But if we compare the nature of mudras, Dhammachakra Pravartan Mudra is mostly depicted or mostly favored by the contemporary Buddhist society. Rarely we also get Buddha in Mahaparinirvana Mudra. That is a reclining Buddha from cave number 26, Ajanta, then also from Aurangabad cave number and Nasik cave number 23. Images of Hariti and her husband Panchi, which is basically the Yaksha, and also Jambal, that is a Buddhist god of wealth, occupied an important place in the Buddhist imagery. It seems that the images of either Hariti or Jambal in the Buddhist imagery suggest that how the local deities or how the local cult was incorporated into mainstream of Buddhism. And that is why besides the images of Hariti, we also find the images of Naga, either Naga king or Nagas as a Dwarpa, or sometimes Nagas as a devotee of Buddha. So very much presence of Hariti or Yakshas or Nagas suggest the support of local deities or support from local deities to Buddhism. It seems that probably in Western Deccan as well as in Eastern Deccan, these local cults were prominent. So probably as a part of propagation of Dhamma or Buddhism, the Buddhist elite class as well as Buddhist monks wanted or got support from such local cult or the followers of local cult. And as they converted into Buddhism, but still they converted it, even after converting into Buddhism, the nature of influence of such a local cult was so strong, they were subsequently incorporated into Buddhism and shown in Buddhist imagery as a subsidiary or in secondary position. But that is not case with Hariti. In Aurangabad cave number 7 we find Hariti and Panchik are shown. How Buddhist texts depicted Hariti and the entire episode of conversion of Hariti. She used to steal children of Rajagruha and used to eat them. And then how the people of Rajagruha subsequently approached to Buddha, and then Buddha converted Hariti and took promise from her that she will not capture any child of Rajagruha further. And Buddha promised Hariti that in every monastery, Buddhist monks and Buddhist lay people will offer food before having or before eating them. Probably it is one of the reasons that when the Chinese traveler Xuanzang visited India during the 7th century of the Common Era, he noticed separate chamber or special place for Hariti's image, and how Buddhist monks and Buddhist devotees were offering food to Hariti. So in that context, if we see the presence of Hariti imagery in Buddhist caves at Ajanta, Ellora and Aurangabad, it confirms that this practice which was very much present in northern India, was also existed in Deccan, especially in the western Deccan. The presence of Jambhal, Buddhist god of wealth, confirms how the nature of Buddhist iconography or Buddhist religious imagery incorporated Jambhal and started to depict his images in Buddhist caves due to the continuous ongoing interaction with the trading community. As Buddhist monks or Buddhist elite society understood the importance of either Hariti or Panchik, Yaksha, king, or even Jambhal in the contemporary society. So it shows probably the presence of these images further authenticate how the contemporary religious authority was trying to understand the nature of contemporary society, contemporary, you can say, the politics of contemporary socio-economic setting. Most of these sculptures were painted. Unfortunately, only remains of paintings or the plaster are seen in only few caves. It seems that most of the caves were earlier plastered and painted. Yeah. Especially in Tantric Buddhism, we find the Tantric Buddhist imagery is mostly associated with the different colors. So in that context, this painting or these painted images must have some special significance. We are not sure whether the caves at Aurangabad were fully painted like Ajanta as such. It seems that most of the caves were plastered, the color without a specialized or without a specific paintings which we find in Ajanta. So maybe because of the Aurangabad caves are located in the town or they are very close to town, so maybe because of the various elements, as we now know that there is a insect, silverfish, which is very much responsible for the deterioration of the paintings at Ajanta. After once the Ajanta, after its discovery, came to close or came to contact with the domestic society or the people. It seems that maybe not only some insects, but also maybe because of the weather, the seepage of water, are some of the factors which may cause damage to Aurangabad paintings. But we do not have any evidence that entire caves were painted as such like Ajanta. The Chaitya that is a cave number 4, is not upside down. It is a rectangular on plan.
Okay.
So this is a interesting feature of Aurangabad Chaitya
Okay.
We do not get a standard plan of early monastic vihara or the standard plan of early vihara which we mostly found in early Buddhist caves. That is the Ajanta cave, then Pitalakora cave number 4, then Kondane cave number 2, many of the caves at Bhaje and early Buddhist monasteries. But the plan of Mahayana cave, that is a shrine cum monastery, is very much present in cave number 3. The cave number 2 and cave number 5 are special caves. They are small shrines with pradakshina path. So it shows that how under the influence of bhakti cult, that is the devotion, how the Buddhism also incorporated some elements which were present in contemporary temples. So the presence of pradakshina path is a very interesting factor seen in these Buddhist caves. We also find such pradakshina path in cave number 6 and cave number 7. So cave number 6 and cave number 7 are special examples of tantric Buddhist caves. But we do not get either cave number 5 at Ajanta, which was specially made for the educational purpose, or 3-storied big monasteries, that is a cave number either 11 or 12 at Ellora. Such a big monastic structures are missing, but it seems that most of the caves are mostly associated with the worship. So it seems that the worship nature or the ritualistic nature of this cave was more dominating than the residential or purpose. And that is the reason is very simple, because this is probably one of the few caves or few cave sites which is very close to the urban center or the society. By the end of 7th century of the Common Era, or you can say early 8th century, Aurangabad as an important Buddhist religious center was prosperous. By that time, only few centers of Buddhism were surviving in the Western Deccan. We do not know exact reason for why this center discontinued as a center of Buddhism. But especially the caves, unfinished cave, that is the cave number 10, 11, 12, suggests that the support from the trading community was discontinued. There was very much attraction towards Shaivism in the contemporary society. So by early 8th century of the Common Era, it seems that the activities such as excavating new caves seem to be discontinued. So even after that, the cave number 6A suggests that at least for short period, we are again not sure whether all, but it seems that at least few caves were occupied by the followers of Shaivism and Shaktism, which is again authenticated by the presence of Saptamatrika figures and the images of Ganesh and Virabhadra in this complex. Interestingly, we do not get any evidence from Aurangabad caves which suggests that some of the idols or some of the images were purposely destroyed or damaged or any kind of human vandalism. We do not get. It is very interesting that they were preserved in their original context. Either we get the damage mostly because of the natural factors, maybe because of the geological defects in the stones, or maybe because of the seepage of water in some of the caves. But we do not get any evidence of intentional or well organized vandalism in this entire